three things that take Bitcoin up by 100x from where it is today. The first thing is to legitimize and accept and endorse it as an institutional grade asset. So fair regulation of the asset itself in the securities industry. And in January, we got the first installment of that with the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETF, but it was an incomplete regulation because the SEC still denies in-kind creation of ETF shares, and the SEC still denies the ability to trade options on top of spot Bitcoin ETF shares. And the acceptance was given grudgingly, it was basically, I did it because I had to do it, but I didn't like it, okay? So what's the significance of that? The negative opinion expressed when the approval came, that sits as a shadow over a lot of mainstream investors. We need to flip from a negative opinion to at least a neutral opinion. Like, why is it that a federal regulator isn't expressing an opinion that this asset is good or bad versus that asset? So I think that's got to change still. I think that the lack of in-kind creates and redemption means that it's a taxable event if I want to contribute Bitcoin or withdraw Bitcoin from an ETF. So if you were to invest in an ETF and it 10x'd and then you wanted to take your Bitcoin in self-custody, you're getting charged 30% of the Bitcoin. If you wanted to move the Bitcoin from an ETF to a bank or to another custodian, you're getting charged as if you sold it, even though you didn't sell it. So right now, there's a tax inefficiency, and that's hostile. Whenever you tax someone to vibrate remember when I talked about vibration and frequency? When you tax on the trade or on the transformation, you're hostile. You're oppressing the transaction. It's like you're damping the wave. So I think allowing in-kind creates and redemptions will be a big advance forward. When you allow people to trade options on them, you will eliminate or lessen the volatility and increase the ability to generate yield. And those two things are what you would expect in the maturation of the asset class as a security. So that's the first plank. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10 with regard to institutionalizing the asset, we're at a 6 there, and in terms of embracing. The second plank is fair accounting. Okay, if I wanted to keep you from buying anything, I would establish an accounting rule that said you can only lose money on the trade, but you can never make money. And that's a one-way ratchet. If I actually set up an accounting system where you always lose, you never win, and if you win, you have to act like you lost. And then if you lose again, you could win 99 times, but the 100th time you lose, you report one loss, no wins. Okay, that's just prejudicial and hostile. Okay, so indefinite intangible accounting allows you to lose but not win. And it's the kind of accounting you give to things you don't want people to buy. And so fair accounting was critical. And this January, it became optional. And next January, it will be mandatory. And so that's a big step forward. Let's just say we're 75% of the way along there, but we'll be sort of at 100% when you have 24 or 36 companies and they're all using the same fair value accounting and everybody's talking about it, and you start to see companies report multi-billion-dollar or 10 mega-billion-dollar gains on that accounting, right? That'll be a big deal. That's 2. And then the third is if individuals aren't allowed to self-custody, that's hostile to Bitcoin. If I pass the law saying you can't custody, that's an attack on Bitcoin. if companies can't self-custody, that's an attack on Bitcoin. If I had a company whose job was to sell custody services to institutions, if I provided custody to Yale Endowment or to a big hedge fund, and then if the government had a law that made it illegal for the custodian to provide custody for your asset, that's hostile. So right now, SAB 121 is a rule that basically makes it impossible for a bank to custody Bitcoin. And the right way to look at it is, well, that's basically a regulation preventing companies that want to custody from custodying. And so the result of that is you have basically the government saying, I guess you can buy the ETF, but the ETF is not allowed to use their bank to custody the Bitcoin, and they can only use a crypto exchange to custody the Bitcoin, and we're going to sue the crypto exchange. And so when you have the government hostile to the crypto custodian, hostile to the banks, hostile to the institutional custodian, you're kind of you're undermining the ETF industry, and you're undermining the asset. So the third plank is we just need for the SEC, the OCC, the FDIC to allow banks like JP Morgan and Citigroup and Goldman. But by the way, you might not like JP Morgan because of what the CEO has said. But let me guarantee you that within a year or 2 years of when it's possible to custody Bitcoin, JP Morgan will start a process to do that. And within 4 years, they'll be custodying Bitcoin because it's money, and that's what they do.